Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us on the program today. I'm Joke Rogers. Here's what's coming up within the hour. More than 90 lorry loads of humanitarian aid have been collected by UN teams in the Gaza Strip 3 days after Israel eased an 11-week-long blockade. 2 Israeli embassy staffers shot dead as they were leaving a Jewish event in Washington, D.C. And small plane crashes into San Diego neighborhood, setting several homes on fire. Let's begin the world today. We start off in the Middle East, where UN teams inside the Gaza Strip have collected over 90 lorry loads of humanitarian aid 3 days after Israel eased an 11-week-long blockade. Flour, baby food and medical equipment and much more were picked up from the Kerem Shalom crossing on Wednesday night and taken to warehouses for distribution. The UN says the delays were due to insecurity along the single-access route which the Israeli military had approved. Israeli authorities said they allowed an additional 100 vehicles through Kerem Shalom on Wednesday. However, the UN says it was nowhere near enough to meet the vast needs in Gaza. Humanitarian organizations have warned of acute levels of hunger among the 2.1 million population amid significant shortages of basic foods and skyrocketing prices. An assessment by the UN-backed Integrated Food Security Phase classification has also said that 500,000 people face starvation in the coming months. Aside from food and medical supply, chronic shortages of water are also worsening in Gaza as Israel's expanding military offensive causes new waves of displacement, and desalination and hygiene plants are running out of fuel. The UN and its partners have raised concerns that without immediate fuel deliveries, there may be a full shutdown of water and sanitation facilities by the end of the week. Days after Israel imposed its blockade on aid in early March, it also cut off power to the main desalination plants, a vital source of water for Gazans. It said these steps were to put pressure on Hamas to release the remaining hostages it's holding. Elsewhere, 2 Israeli embassy staff have been shot dead leaving an event at the capital, the Washington, D.C. Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. The Israeli embassy in the United States says Sarah Lynn Milgram and Yaron Lezinski were a couple in their prime before they were killed. The suspect believed to be involved in the attack, identified by police as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez from Chicago, has been detained. Police say that he shouted "Free Palestine" after being taken into custody. Officers will look into ties to potential terrorism. In the meantime, the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, has denounced the deadly shooting, pledging to curb further threats in the community. Speaking at a press conference, the mayor says Washington does not tolerate any violence or act of terrorism, indicating that the horrific incident is going to frighten a lot of people in the country. Police have identified the suspect as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez, who reportedly shouted "Free Palestine" during his arrest.
What I do know is that the horrific incident is going to frighten a lot of people in our city and in our country. And I want to be clear that we will not tolerate this violence or hate in our city. We will not tolerate any acts of terrorism, and we're going to stand together as a community in the coming days and weeks to send a clear message that we will not tolerate anti-Semitism.
We believe the shooting was committed by a single suspect who is now in custody. Prior to the shooting, the suspect was observed pacing back and forth outside of the museum. He approached a group of 4 people, produced a handgun, and opened fire, striking both of our decedents. After the shooting, the suspect then entered the museum and was detained by event security. Once in handcuffs, the suspect identified where he discarded the weapon, and that weapon has been recovered and he implied that he committed the offense.
The FBI stands with the Metropolitan Police Department to help not only investigate the homicide and provide support, but also to look into ties to potential terrorism or motivation based on a bias-based crime or a hate crime. That's our reason for being here. Full support of the FBI to Metropolitan Police Department to resolve this. And I also want to express my sincere gratitude to Metropolitan Police Department for their quick action, their attempts to render aid despite the nature of the crime resulting in the death of the victims. Getting the subject in custody quickly resolved this issue and allows us to continue with the investigation.
Together with President Trump, our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, will stand together tall and firm, and we will confront this moral depravity without fear and with determination. And now we'll turn to taking care of the families of these two victims. And again, I thank the American administration, the city of Washington, and the law enforcement officers who are on this case, going to get to the bottom of it and bring justice to the city, to the people of Washington, the United States, and the people of Israel, who are here feeling confident and safe in the city of Washington and around the United States of America.
His prayers are with all of us, all of the Jewish community, everyone in Washington, D.C., state, local, and federal agencies, and our great U.S. Attorney, Jeanine Pirro, who will be prosecuting this case. We'll be doing everything in our power to keep all citizens safe, especially tonight, our Jewish community. Our prayers go out. We have the FBI, all of our federal agencies will work hand in hand with you, Chief, as we have done, and you, Mayor, to do everything we can to keep our citizens safe.
Foreign Minister Gideon Saar has blamed European leaders for what he called a horrific terrorist attack on Israeli embassy staff members. Mr. Saar believes the incident is a direct result of toxic anti-Semitic incitement against Israel and Jews around the world that has been going on since the October 7th invasion by Hamas. According to Israel's ambassador to the United States, the victims, Yaron Lechinsky and Sarah Lynn Milgram, were a couple who were about to be engaged in Jerusalem next week. They were shot as they were leaving a diplomatic event. He also accused European leaders of yielding to Palestinian terrorist propaganda and criticized their public remarks regarding the conflict. We'll get more on that in just a moment. In the meantime, thousands of protesters marched through Rotterdam on Wednesday after a vessel carrying parts for F-35 fighter jets from Israel docked at the city's port, sparking outrage among activists who accused Dutch authorities of enabling arms transfers in violation of a recent court ruling. The protesters follow reports that the vessel transported F-35 components despite a 2023 Dutch court ruling ordering a halt to such exports to Israel due to concerns over violations of international humanitarian law in the Gaza. Demonstrators could be seen carrying placards with slogans such as "Rotterdam, make genocide happen," and "No weapons through our port." A dramatic outburst also occurred, with one protester removing an Israeli flag from a street flagpole, setting it on fire, and then replacing it with a Palestinian flag. Protesters are calling on the international community to stop the massacre and end the killing of innocent people.
We are here today because to tell the Rotterdam about the shipment for the spare parts of the aeroplanes F-35 from Rotterdam and against the company Mariska, because we make a lot of demonstration about it and we told them about it, but they didn't do anything. But today we try to talk with the humanity about that things, and there are today discussion in the humanity itself. We want that company to stop shipping all the spare parts of all the weapons to Israel, because all the international United Nations, they have to stop all that, such kind of thing, and we want to stop the genocide.
Elsewhere now, a small plane crashed into a residential area of San Diego early on Thursday morning, and police say several homes and cars caught fire, with the public told to avoid the area. The Federal Aviation Authority says the plane that was involved on Thursday morning in San Diego crash is a Cessna 550. It's currently unknown what caused the crash and whether anyone has been injured. Let's get back to our top story of that shooting in Washington, D.C., where two staff members of the Israeli embassy were shot dead. A couple they've been identified as a couple due to be engaged in Jerusalem next week. Washington, D.C. correspondent Maria Bird joins us now for more. Maria, I understand you do not have much time because of everything that needs to be covered at this time in the United States, but authorities have identified the suspect of the shooting as Elias Rodriguez. The slain victims were a couple who were about to be engaged next week. Do we know the motive for the shooting?
Well, we know that this is something that has hit the community extremely hard. This was right outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in D.C., where the American Jewish community is hosting an event on Wednesday night. The woman that we know was killed, and it was a young couple, as you mentioned, that were engaged, and they were research assistants in political department at the embassy. And so this is, it's really unclear. As you said, the suspect is from Chicago, and he was chanting free Palestine while in custody. And so this obviously is dealing with the war, and we are waiting obviously for police to provide further insight into and into exactly beyond that. I mean, the president has already stated this is anti-Semitic hatred and radicalism. And we know that this is just a really difficult time for Americans. And obviously there's a lot of police presence around the embassy at this time.
And the police say they are looking into terrorism links. How seriously is this being treated as a potential hate crime or politically motivated attack?
This is at the height of priority around whether it's a hate crime or terrorism. The question is this domestic terrorism is the real question, and does this individual have any ties outside of the United States? So all of that is being investigated at this time. But we know we are in extremely contentious times as we look at Americans and their feelings regarding Palestinian and Israeli war, and really noting the fact that we have been hearing a lot of concerns around the famine that exists in Palestine. And so we are just definitely devastated by what has occurred. And this just puts another layer on top of the already complicated and challenging situation.
Right, and we heard earlier the mayor of D.C. saying that there's no active threats in the capital, but it's such a terrible incident. How is Washington reacting to this?
Well, as you mentioned, because of the targeted event and nature of this Wednesday night at an event that focused on the Jewish community, that does put to rest the rest of the Washington, D.C. community to know that there's likely not any kind of imminent threat for others. Obviously, the Israeli embassy is under security and definitely focal point at this time. But the American community and those in Washington are concerned about what this means for other members of the Jewish community, what this really even means for Palestinians in the Washington, D.C. area. So it's a time of, I think, question and really reflection onto how to bring the two entities together and really finding a way for these type of horrendous acts to not be an occurrence.
Right, Maria, thank you for your time and for the updates on that story. U.S. President Donald Trump hosted his South African counterpart Cyril Ramaphosa at the White House on Wednesday amid tensions between the two countries. The public part of the meeting appeared quite tense after President Trump ambushed The South African president with news and videos to back his claim that South Africa is committing genocide against South African farmers. President Ramaphosa reiterated that there's no genocide in his country.
Tension ran high at the Oval Office on Wednesday as South African President Cyril Ramaphosa met with U.S. President Donald Trump. The Oval Office meeting began cordially until Trump asked for the lighting to be lowered for a video presentation. The mood shifted. The meeting, intended to mend ties, took an unexpected turn when Mr. Trump ambushed the South African delegation with a video montage alleging white genocide in South Africa.
The mayor of DA in PE is a white man. So these people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain.
President Trump confronted President Ramaphosa about violence against white farmers, claiming the South African government wasn't doing enough to stop it. A visibly uncomfortable Ramaphosa denied these claims, emphasizing that crime affects all races and that his government opposes violence. The video shown by Trump included clips from South African opposition party Economic Freedom Fighters EFF's leader Julius Malema's rallies featuring the song Shoot the Boer, as well as the news stories about the white South Africans fleeing violence and discriminatory laws. President Ramaphosa remained calm, explaining that his government works to reduce violence across all communities.
Well, I think the videos are so... No, when you look at the videos, I mean, how does it get worse? And these are people that are officials, and they're saying that kill the white farmer and take their land. That's what it is. And I have other friends in South Africa, I have people that left, one in particular that says you can't go there. He said they want to take your land, they take your land, and they kill you. It's okay, and they say it's okay to do. Now, we're going to talk about it, but this is a tremendous... Look, this is a story recent. Yeah. These are all people that recently got killed. Yeah. And I don't know how it can get any worse. These are... And, you know, the men that you saw, the people that you saw in that movie, those are officials. Those are people that were in office. They had one march, they had a dance in your parliament, whatever you may call it, legislature.
Well, let me clarify that.
Yeah,
let me clarify that, because what you saw, the speeches that were being made, one, that is not government policy. We have a multi-party democracy in South Africa that allows people to express themselves, political parties to adhere to various policies, and in many cases, or in some cases, those policies do not go along with government policy. Our government policy is completely against what he was saying, even in the parliament. And they're a small minority party, which is allowed to exist in terms of our constitution.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can take land.
And then when they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No, there is
nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately, through criminal activity, are not only white.
President Ramaphosa also said that he hoped Mr. Trump would listen to the voices of South Africans when asked by a reporter what it would take for the U.S. leader to be convinced that there is no white genocide in South Africa.
Well, I can answer that for the President. It's for him. No, seriously.
I'd rather have him answer.
Yeah, I'd rather answer that. It will be,
our President will respond to you. Thank you, Mr. President.
It will take President Trump listening to the voices of South Africans, some of whom are his good friends, like those who are here. When we have talks between us on the around a quiet table, it will take President Trump to listen to them. I'm not going to be repeating what I've been saying. I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me. So it'll take him, President Trump, listening to their stories, to their perspective. That is the answer to your question.
Wednesday's meeting came days after the arrival of 59 white South Africans in the U.S., where they were granted refugee status. The meeting highlighted the complexities of U.S.-South African relations, with divergent views on South Africa's racial and security concerns, raising questions about the future of U.S.-South Africa relations.
Well, despite the tense meeting, Mr. Ramaphosa said that his talks with Mr. Trump, which focused on trade and investments, went well and called the visit a great success. The South African leader hailed Wednesday's meeting, saying there was a firm agreement to continue engagements, particularly on trade and investment. He also downplayed Mr. Trump's confrontation in the Oval Office, instead saying he believed there remained doubt and disbelief in Mr. Trump's mind over his claims of white genocide. Mr. Ramaphosa says he expected Mr. Trump to visit South Africa, and the U.S. participation in November's G20 meeting is going to be happening.
The issue that he kept raising, or he raised prominently, is the issue of genocide. And when he was asked by one of you, and thank God one of you asked, whether he was convinced that there was genocide, he says, no, he's not convinced. Much as he flighted the video and all those press clippings. And in the end, I mean, I do believe that there's doubt and disbelief in his head about all this. So all in all, I do believe that our visit here has been a great success. We've been able to achieve what we set out to achieve re-engagement with the U.S. So all in all, I'm rather pleased. I go back tonight having a sense that we have done well. I know that many South Africans were filled with a great deal of concern and fear that we will have a Z moment and all that. That did not ensue. And I know that you yourselves as the media, you wanted to see drama and something really big happening. And I'm sorry that we disappointed you somewhat when it comes to that.
Earlier, my colleague Layo Olarinde had a discussion with the Executive Director, Center for Risk Analysis, Kruzenshtern, in Johannesburg.
I think all in all, given the rhetoric that we've seen from the administration in the first 6 months of this year, things have gone well yesterday, better than maybe could have been hoped for. Why do I say that? Look, I know there was quite a lot of, in front of the cameras, there was different emotive talking points. But President Ramaphosa managed to, in my assessment, maintain a mature reaction. He brought in various of his cabinet partners and members and tried to present his view of his government of national unity and of the reality in South Africa. So I'm not saying that one should expect to get everything in these engagements, especially with a more transactional president, as is President Trump. But all in all, given that longer-term context, I think this is at least a PR victory for President Ramaphosa and for South Africa.
Indeed, Chris. Now, South Africa's leader has hailed this meeting as a success, and, you know, with trade and investment issues that they spoke about. That remains to be seen, though. Did South Africa, in your opinion, achieve its purpose with what we saw play out?
I'm sure that President Ramaphosa and his colleagues would have had different goals or key performance metrics, if you want to use very corporate language, that they would have aimed for. So maybe short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Some of that would have been a kind of reset of the relationship between South Africa and the US. But also it would have been to talk about critical minerals, about AGOA, about other forms of trade and investment between South Africa and the US. So it depends now how South Africa uses this moment going forward. For example, if South Africa can get a bilateral trade agreement, if it can push support for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, if South Africa can really convince President Trump to attend the G20, which of course South Africa is hosting the main summit in November this year in Johannesburg. On those metrics, so one can then consider this meeting in and of itself a successful meeting or not. But South Africa needs to use it going forward. I think it shouldn't be seen in isolation only.
Indeed. And could we also, touch on the composure of President Ramaphosa, in the famous Oval Office that seemed to come with the risk of a public dressing down? The President also talked about it, that he disappointed the public, that we're looking forward to probably the moment, a meeting, and that's referring to Zelensky meeting back in February in that same Oval Office.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right to highlight that because that is sort of people's frame of reference for engagements between President Trump and some other world leaders. At the same time, there has been, I think, more constructive engagements with people like Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of the UK, of course, Keir Starmer. It is a range of engagements. So on that point of view, I think President Ramaphosa did well, especially when the video was played, the video which contained clips from the leader of the economic freedom fighters, Julius Malema, which would have been part of a sort of gotcha moment by the Trump administration to see how South Africa reacts, to see how President Ramaphosa reacts. In that case, where President Ramaphosa and his colleagues tried to bring the agenda and the narrative back to their point of view and not do so in a condescending way or a way that's perceived to be condescending, I think that's a sort of moral and or at least a PR victory.
Away from that, to the war between Russia and Ukraine, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has reacted to this week's Trump-Putin telephone conversation, calling it an important step in helping resolve the Russian-Ukraine war. Speaking at a joint press conference with Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof, Mr. Rutte says he remained realistic over the chances that the call alone could produce a ceasefire agreement. He highlighted Europe's disproportionate social spending compared to its military capacity, warning that defense is essential if we want to protect what makes Europe so livable. The Trump-Putin call reportedly touched on possibilities of a ceasefire framework, but concrete outcomes remain distant. Well, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has met his Lebanese counterpart in Beirut, with both leaders pledging to ensure that all weapons are controlled by the Lebanese state. The meeting focused on efforts to disarm armed factions operating independently in Lebanon, many of them Palestinian or Hezbollah-aligned. The Lebanese presidency said the two sides agreed the era of weapons outside state authority must end, citing decades of suffering caused by such groups. The visit also signals growing pressure on non-state actors amid Lebanon's economic and political stability. UN Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, has welcomed U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement to lift sanctions on the country, calling it a historic move that could ease the country's humanitarian crisis. Briefing the UN Security Council from Damascus, Mr. Pedersen said Syria still faces major challenges, but now has a chance to emerge from poverty and conflict. The U.S. says the decision offers Syrians a chance at greatness, while Syria's own envoy hailed it as a turning point towards peace. However, renewed Israeli airstrikes and internal displacement still poses risks to progress.
Last week, in a significant development celebrated across Syria, United States President Trump announced from Riyadh that he would order the cessation of sanctions on Syria. Yesterday, the European Union announced the lifting of its economic sanctions on Syria. The UK revoked their previous sanctions regime last month. I have long called for bold steps on sanctions, as have millions of Syrians in and outside the country, and I warmly welcome these international steps. These are indeed historic developments. They hold major potential to improve living conditions across the country and to support the Syrian political transition. And they give the Syrian people a chance to grapple with the legacy of misrule, conflict, abuses, and poverty from which they are trying to emerge. But we also know that Syria faces significant structural challenges with an economy ravaged by over a decade of war and conflict and a host of other destabilizing factors. Revitalizing a devastated economy will require from the interim authorities sustained actions, including on overall economic reform and governance standards across the financial system. And this will need international support. Let me also note my alarm at renewed Israeli airstrikes in Syria in the reporting period, including during the violence in Druze areas and close to the presidential palace. Such attacks are unacceptable and must cease. Syria's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity must be respected. There are clearly diplomatic possibilities, and these must be prioritized.
Heavy floodwaters in eastern Australia's New South Wales have left 3 people dead and 2 others missing as officials brace for further heavy rainfall that's expected to worsen the crisis in the coming days. According to the Commissioner of State Emergency Services, the record rainfall, now declared a natural disaster, was caused by a slow-moving area of low pressure and is greater than any in living memory for some residents. He says more than 2,000 emergency service workers are attending rescues, including those stranded on rooftops overnight, while separate searches are underway for people missing on the mid-north coast. The flood, which have left thousands of homes and businesses without power and more than 100 schools shut down, evacuation centers have been opened for those fleeing the flooding. North Korea's leader Kim Jong has condemned the accident during which the launch of a new warship, calling it a criminal act that could not be tolerated. The state media reports that part of the 5,000-ton destroyer's bottom were crushed, tipping the vessel off balance. Mr. Kim, who was present at the launch, has ordered the ship to be restored before a key party meeting in June, and for those involved in designing the ship to be held responsible for the incident, which he says severely damaged the dignity and pride of the nation in an instant. Well, a massive fire has erupted at a diesel facility in Mexico's Nuevo Leon, engulfing the Mavic company's site, which specializes in the marketing, distribution, and distillation of diesel, following reports of a huge explosion at the facility. At least 11 people were evacuated from the building during the fire, leaving 1 injured and is reportedly receiving treatment at a local hospital. According to a preliminary report from Nuevo Leon's Civil Protection, the fire has consumed approximately 13 diesel containers, each with a capacity of over 10,000 liters. Meanwhile, authorities have deployed specialized equipment and water tankers to contain the fire and assess the potential environmental risks caused by the combustion of the diesel. In Brazil, lifelike dolls known as Reborns are making headlines for their astonishing realism. Crafted from silicone and vinyl, these hyper-realistic baby replicas have become highly sought after by collectors, children and adults alike, many of whom are willing to spend substantial sums to own one. While Reborn dolls have existed for years, their recent surge in popularity has reignited controversy on social media, where many users debate their unsettling resemblance to real newborns. Each Reborn is made from a silicone vinyl mold and undergoes a meticulous artistic process. Skin tones are carefully painted by hand, acrylic or blown glass eyes are inserted, and hair, often synthetic or made from goat mohair, is individually implanted strand by strand. More than just toys, Reborn dolls have become a cultural phenomenon that blends detailed artistry with psychological and emotional resonance. Some even use them for therapeutic purposes, particularly individuals coping with the loss of a child. However, the growing visibility of the dolls in public spaces has raised concerns about boundaries and context. Well, the World Health Assembly has adopted the long-anticipated World Health Organization Pandemic Agreement in Geneva, marking what the WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus called one of the most significant achievements in the history of the organization and of global health. The decision followed months of negotiations among member states, culminating in a unanimous vote to adopt the agreement under Article 19 of the WHO Constitution.
Step by step, you moved from red lines to green text, from entrenched positions to landing zones, and from contradiction to compromise, convergence, and consensus. You began your work in the middle of one crisis, and you have reached this milestone in the middle of another. And today, we celebrate. Today, you have sent a loud message that multilateralism not only works, but is the only way to find shared solutions to shared threats. Let's not understate what you have achieved. You have made the world a safer place. I repeat, a safer place. It will not infringe on national sovereignty in any way, nor give the WHO Secretariat power to impose mask or vaccine mandate or lockdowns. Anyone who says it will is clearly mistaken. You, the member states, have made that very clear in the text of the agreement itself. You're all aware of the torrent of mis- and disinformation that we have faced through the negotiation of this agreement. And although you have now adapted it, deception and distortion will continue.
Futuristic humanoids, agile robot dogs, and advanced service robots showed off their capabilities at the Guangzhou International Intelligent Robot Exhibition. Attendees and businessman Yubi says that the things are changing rapidly in the robotics industry in China. The international exhibition was organized with participation of various organizations, including the Guangdong Robotics Association and China Council for the Promotion of International Trade. According to reports, 800 exhibitors will be present at the show, which will run until tomorrow, and manufacturers hope to conclude agreements and establish large-scale production.
We came from Vietnam with very humble products to introduce about our educational products, about the software installations in the smart mannequin robot. We also had some robotics in the delivery, like the deluxe and luxury. Because of the logistics limitation, we just can only bring some very simple products to here. It's an honor to come here and to learn from the biggest robotics companies in China, also from international markets as well.
Comparing to the last exhibition I have joined, everything has really changed, you know, especially when it comes to the robotic storage, as they call them, in which before they made a lot of robotics just related to the big warehouses, but now they help also small-scale businesses owners, in which they made small robotics to serve also the small owners. So I think so far, I believe that the storage or the robotic related to storage are the best so far. People, they say that so far China has more than 190,000, you know, patents related to the robotic industries. It means the infrastructure is already there. They just, how can I say, they will innovate more, they will improve more. But I believe that in 5 years or 10 years, we will see crazy things in which these robots will make everything in your life easier. Either if it's in the health industry, education, manufacturing, warehousing, as what we have seen today. I believe China has the power to do all these things because of the infrastructure that no one else has.
Nigeria, the Lagos State government has called for collaboration between the federal and state auditors general to build a robust accountability ecosystem in the country. The state deputy governor, Kadri Hamzat, made this known at the 54th biannual conference of the body of federal and state auditors general with the theme Nigerian Accountability Ecosystem, leveraging on performance audit for effective governance and transparency. He says sharing best practices, harmonizing audit standards, and investing in capacity building will enhance the nation's collective ability to detect inefficiencies and promote transparency.
Lagos State plays host to the 54th biannual conference of the body of federal and state auditor generals, where 32 states is represented at this gathering held at GRA Ikeja. The conversations kick off with a paper presentation on auditing for impact, aligning performance audit with state development priorities.
You can work with a lot of people, so which is why you have the MDAs as well.
For us to have sustainable development, I repeat, our infrastructure to GDP ratio must be nothing less than about 50%.
Lagos State Auditor General speaks on the need to enhance auditing practices for transparency and good governance.
May this conference inspire us to strive for excellence and make a positive impact of our beloved nation.
The federal and state government urge auditors to explore innovative solutions that will transform the profession and align with national development priorities.
I encourage this body to advocate for reform, especially concerning amendment that will strengthen audit independence, ensure timely access to information, and guarantee the full implementation of audit recommendations.
If all the auditors do the needful, probably the effectiveness, the impact of the budget every year in, year out, we will surely see it in our people.
The Deputy Governor of Lagos charged the Auditors General to take the role of auditing most seriously to reduce corruption in the public service.
Collaboration between federal and state auditors general is very essential. Sharing best practices, harmonizing audit standards, and investing in capacity building will enhance our collective ability to detect inefficiencies and promote transparency.
The federal and state governments say they are ready to work together to harmonize audit standards and promote transparency in governance.
And finally on the program, the historic Russian sailing ship Kruzenshtern has docked in Port Louis, marking 50 years since it was deployed there by the Soviet Union for humanitarian aid following Cyclone Gervais. This year, the ship is also celebrating its 99th anniversary. In 1975, it arrived in Mauritius as part of a Soviet humanitarian rescue mission following the Cyclone Gervais disaster, which left 10 dead and destroyed thousands of homes and other infrastructure. The vessel, named after a great explorer, Admiral Adam Kruzenshtern, who led the first Russian circumnavigation of the globe in 1803 to 1806, is expected to spend 5 days in Port Louis before returning to the Russian port of Kaliningrad.
This bark, this sailing ship, Kruzenshtern, is a new symbol of Russian-Mauritius relations. We started from the documentary film regarding the Gervais cyclone recovery operation, which was made by Russian military sailors. First of all, it's 50th anniversary of a rescue operation after Gervais cyclone in 1975. And Kruzenshtern shows that Indian Ocean doesn't divide our nations, it connects them.
I'm a practice supervisor on board a sailing training vessel, Kruzenshtern. So first of all, I would like to say that we are really happy and glad to have you here on board Kruzenshtern. This year, Kruzenshtern is celebrating 99th anniversary, and also this voyage is dedicated to the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War, or the World War II.
About the ship Kruzenshtern, it's a big proud for me to visit this famous ship, and especially that the ship was 50 years ago had rescue operation at Mauritius. So it means a lot for this country, I think, and this ship is just amazing.
This is an opportunity for a lot of Mauritians to come and see how Russian ship architecture is. It's actually quite a very old boat. It was made in 1926, and it's still here. So it's very, it's amazing for me to be able to experience it.
This is my first time visiting the ship that visited Mauritius earlier. It's very interesting. This tour is very educational. I learned a lot about the ships and how they work and how they're built. I think this trip on this beautiful ship will help Mauritius and Russia become closer.
And that's The World Today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joker Rogers.